back. My name's Kelly McKechnie. We're talking about my Appalachian Trail through hike. Again, it's 2,190, give or take some miles, that I went from Maine to Georgia in the winter between 2017 and 2018. So today we're going to talk about preparation, but before I get into that, I want to make some corrections on mistakes from the last video I put out. And again, this is going to happen every single time. I'm going to make mistakes. I said analyst. It's not a word. I was a lab analyst. First correction. Second correction was I didn't freeze dry my food. My dog had freeze dried food. I had dehydrated food that I did myself. Those two corrections, at least the ones that I noticed. Let me know if I made more. So for my preparation for the hike, we're going to tie back into how I was working in Michigan, because again, I was working between April and October because that was our field season. So I had between early October and end of March kind of do whatever I wanted to do. So I would go back to my home in Lexington, North Carolina, and I would walk the fields, getting some practice in. I would lift, train, just do whatever I could to keep in shape. And then also this winter of 2016 and 2017, I hiked the Georgia section of the Appalachian Trail. My dog and I, Riley, we went on a hike starting at Springer Mountain. We hiked up to the North Carolina border, and then we turned and came back. So we did a loop within the Georgia area. That was mainly to get a good feel for the gear we were going to be using, the rations and portions of their food sizes, because I'll get into this later in today's video. I had to figure out the drop locations for the food and how much I needed to include in there to get us to the next section. So I had to have a pretty good understanding of how rapidly we would be going through our food supplies in order to get to the next location for food drops. And that'll make more sense when I get into it. Just going over my trusty notes again, because there's a lot to go over today. And then, so again, touching back on the mistake I made last episode, I did not have freeze-dried food. I had dehydrated food. Riley, on the other hand, did have freeze-dried food that I bought from Amazon, I believe, or a store somewhere. But she had normal dog food, and then she had high caloric freeze-dried food that I topped as like a food topper on top of that. She got peanut butter, which was the dried peanut butter that I just mixed water with because it saved a lot on weight. And then she also got any leftover food that I had. So a lot of the food I brought, she was able to eat as well. So whatever I was not consuming or not finishing for dinner, whatever it was, she was able to consume that as well. So my food that I had, and again, it did fluctuate, it did change based on what was available at stores that I stopped in, what I wanted during specific sections of the trail. I did start out with a stove. I had a Vargo stove and pot. I realized quickly that it was so cold out that the fuel was burning too quickly and it would just take too long for the food to heat up, that I just didn't want it. And I just didn't care to have hot food. It just took too long. I was too tired by the end of the day. So I got rid of my stove and sent the stove and the pot back, and I was relying on cold food. But the start of the hike, I did have warm food. I did harvest a deer, so I am a bow hunter and a gun hunter. I hunt deer primarily. And I had shot a deer the winter before I hiked, and I had saved a lot of that deer into jerky. So I had fresh venison jerky. I had also dehydrated vegetables like carrots, peas, tomatoes, zucchini, squash, all that type of stuff, and I mixed it in with different types of grain like couscous, quinoa, rice, and then I would mix in the jerky and different spices, and then I would heat that up in the pot, and that's what I had for dinner at night. And again, it just got too time-consuming, too exhausting. I just didn't care to have hot food anymore. I was tired. So I sent all of that back, and I was relying primarily on cold foods like tuna, again, the dried peanut butter that I was mixing with water. I had chocolate bars. Honey buns were the best. I had every version of iced, just regular, every version of honey bun you can imagine. I was stocking up on at every single gas station I came in contact with. Ramen was a big one because you can just mix it in cold water, so it was pretty easy. Oats, like instant oats, because the bags you can actually pour water into. They hold water. It's a wax seal on the inside, so I didn't have to have a bowl or anything. And then Rice Krispies, protein bars, all that type of hiking, backpacking stuff you would think of, like the protein bars. That was a big staple because it was easy to pack in and it had a lot of calories in it. And then I went over Riley's food already. So I'm going to kind of talk about the specific gear I had, and then we're going to get into the nitty gritty parts of the preparation itself. I'm going to check on the time here in a second. Okay. Okay, so the gear I use, and I'm going to be linking this stuff because it was a while ago, it was a few years ago, so a lot of it's not available anymore. A lot of the gear has upgraded since then, so the exact model I had is no longer sold. So I'm going to link the most recent and close to what I use version that is currently being sold today for each brand. So the big stuff. I had a tent, a single person tent that Riley and I both slept in with both of our gear. It was an REI tent, single person. I wanted the single person because it was a lot lighter in weight compared to the 2-person tent. And again, I was hiking in winter. I have a lot of winter gear, so my pack was already pretty heavy in addition to all the food we were carrying because we were going anywhere between 5 to 12 days without resupplying. So that's about 50 pounds of food at the max, a lot of food. So I really had to cut on gear in specific areas, and the tent was a big location that I could do that in. So again, an REI single person tent. I had an REI Mummy 30-degree sleeping bag. It was synthetic. I did start with an Enlightened Equipment quilt bag that like zipped up into a bag, but it was mainly a quilt. That was a 0-degree down bag. I did get rid of that bag mainly because it was just not feasible for Riley and myself to sleep in the bag together, which we ended up sleeping in my single person mummy bag together because it did get so cold, get down to negative 14 degrees, the coldest. So to keep her warm, keep myself warm, we slept together in my mummy bag. So again, I did start with the Enlightened Equipment quilt bag, which I love. I use that now. I kept that bag. I do use it now. But she does not come with us on hikes and like hunting, camping trips. So it's perfect for just me. I used a Thermarest pad. It was one of their Lite pads, so the like eggshell type of ones. It was perfect for me. I'm big minimalist when it comes to hiking and backpacking. I can sleep on pretty much anything. So that just kind of leveled the floor for me and got rid of the sticks and the bumps and everything, and it was perfect. And I actually cut it about 3/4, so I gave 1/4 to Riley and I kept 3/4 for myself because your legs don't really need anything to lay on. So I just use it from like the end of my butt up to my head. So 3/4 for me and 1/4 for Riley. And then for my pack, I did have a ZPack. I don't remember the exact model. I'm going to see if I can find it and link it. But it was one of their, the larger volume ones because again, I did have a lot of equipment to bring with me. And eventually I'll kind of get into how I packed everything into that pack because it did get kind of crazy. But it was great because you could adjust the load off of your body in specific areas by bending the pack. It had bendable supports in the back, so you could bring the weight in closer to your back or push it out a little bit further, which did help with lumbar support in that kind of region of the body. I had black diamond trekking poles and lamp, and I did keep my poles even though I broke both of them, which I will get into both stories for that. I should mount them on the wall, actually, now that I'm talking about it, but they have great memories behind them. They were with me the whole trail, so I did keep the black diamond poles. Don't think they're black, they broke, I'm not going to get black diamond. They broke because I was hiking through Pennsylvania. Like, again, they're amazing poles, great quality. If you're getting poles, get black diamond. Same with the lamp. I did a lot of hiking at night because I was trying to get so many miles in, so I had to have a good headlamp that had the red light option for in the mornings when I'm kind of getting ready and don't feel like turning my light on in the early mornings. Same for hiking at night. It was just a great, simple lamp, but it got the job done. For shoes, I started with Salomon boots, and I ended up switching to Ultras. Ever since I switched to Ultras, I have never stopped using Ultra shoes because they're the best shoes, at least for my type of feet. I do recommend them to all my athletes that I'm currently coaching and people I come into contact with in general about training. I love the zero drop on them. I like the minimalist supports, the cushion, and I did have the Ultra high top, so it had the ankle support in as well. The Salomons are wonderful, don't get me wrong. That's more of a high support boot. It is more durable, so it was great through Pennsylvania because you're very prone to twisting ankles. So I'm glad I had them through there. And then I switched around North Carolina time frame, so a little over halfway. And I wish I'd used them the whole trail, to be honest. They are the best shoes. I'll link them in the bottom because I know they're still producing them. For socks, I use Darn Tough socks, and like, who cares about socks? But socks are really important, especially in the winter, because you do sweat so much through your feet even in the winter, and when you're gonna get wet in the winter with your feet in snow, you need to have a good water wicking material, and Darn Tough has the highest quality merino wool socks you're gonna find. So I did double up on those socks when it got really cold. I still use Darn Tough today. It's a great quality. I'm pretty sure they still have the warranty where if your socks have a hole in them, you can send them back and you get new socks. So keep that in mind. Darn Tough socks. Dry sacks to keep everything in, because again, hiking in the winter, I was actually in Maine, southern Maine, northern New Hampshire during hurricane season. So all of them on the weather was coming up through that area, and we would get heavy rain for days, to the point that roads would wash out, light poles got knocked down, towns essentially got closed down because of the amount of water coming through. Thankfully, I was off trail, dry sacks are very important to keep everything dry, especially things you're sleeping in. You don't want to sleep in anything wet, because you're going to get sick. So you have to stay as healthy as you can. Riley had a Ruffwear pack. Great pack. I think she got one raw spot, and that was only because it was very heavy. It was a little overweighted at some points, so it did give her a little raw spot underneath her front arm, but that did eventually go away, because I ended up wearing a lot of her stuff, so she didn't have to wear a pack later on in the hike. I did have a solar charger, but I didn't bring the solar portion. I kept the battery pack for it. When I was hiking in the winter, you're going to get more sun. It's a trade-off. You're going to get more sunlight because there's less foliage, but the sun is up less during the day. So I decided not to carry the solar part because I didn't think I was going to be getting enough out of it, because during the fall I was going to be in the foliage deep in the mountains. I didn't think the sun was going to get to it, and I don't stop long enough to set it out. So I didn't bring the solar charger, but I did keep the battery portion because I did have a camera and I also had my phone. I wanted to keep both of them charged. I didn't want to be out in the woods with nothing out there. So I'm going to try and go back and see if I can find exactly which one it was. But what I did when I was in town, I would charge it all the way, keep it in my pack until I absolutely needed it, and then I'd use it. And it never lost power. Even in the winter, it held the full charge on it, so I could charge my electronics. For the camera, because I did bring a nice camera, I wanted to take the highest quality photos that I could, and I'm really glad I did. It was a Fuji Film camera. I'm not quite sure on the model. I'm going to try and go back and find it again. But that's something I'm glad I carried the extra weight. I had the little camera bag on my chest, and I strapped it to my shoulder straps on my pack. So when I saw something I want to take a photo of, I just unzip it, pull out the camera, snap it, put it back, and go. So instead of fiddling, I'm taking my pack off, unzipping everything, digging through, finding it. So having the chest strap for the camera was perfect. It was, everyone should use it if you're hiking and you're planning on taking photos. Hydration system. This was huge because, again, you can't just run to the sink and grab water on the trail. You have to get it from where you're at. And up in Maine, in New Hampshire, those northern states, it's a lot of stagnant water. It's a lot of lakes, ponds, runoffs that just kind of sit, especially in the rainy season. So when you're on the trail, you want to stick to mainly free-flowing water that's very clear, as close as you can get to groundwater, so coming straight out of the mountain, which a lot of times there are springs where it's coming directly from the mountain, and that's totally fine to just drink from. Totally fine to drink from. It's up to you. But you really should be treating your water either with iodine tablets, because you're going to get giardia, which I'll talk about here later. But you may get some kind of waterborne illness, which will leave your gut extremely unhappy. You may not be able to complete the hike kind of situation. You may be damaging your health for the long run in life. But with that stagnant water, you have to treat it. So what I was using was a Katadyn system, and I believe I'm pronouncing that correctly. I could be wrong. But I had their sacks, like their little drink sacks that had a mouthpiece on them, and they filtered as you were drinking, which was great for me because I didn't want to take the time to squeeze the water into water bottles. I just wanted to fill it up, go, and be done. But I did carry 2 smart water bottles because they're very tall and long. They fit into my pack water bottle holders very easily. So those were my surplus amounts of water in case I went long stretches without water and I needed to drink. Because as you progress south, mainly into Virginia, there's a lot less water prevalent. So you have to store water. I think there was like a 50-mile stretch without any water. So you really have to just make sure that you have enough on there. You kind of go into it like, okay, I need to have enough water on me for the full day, even if I'm passing water constantly. You don't want to just get down to your last water bottle because you don't know when your last water source will be. And then especially as you're getting into camp, you want to go into camp with all your bottles full, or unless you know that camp has a spring that is active, because some of them do go dry. Different parts of the season, like the winter, they're going to go dry. So lots of different planning based on the season you're in. You have to do your research into like how the waters flow through the system, through that terrain in that specific state during different seasons of the year. So kind of familiarize yourself with that. And then for gloves, because I did hike in the winter, I had winter gloves. I used NorthFace gloves. I still have them. They're like snow gloves. And like for like shirts and jackets and stuff, I hiked in basketball shorts. I hiked in a merino wool long sleeve shirt that had like a quarter zip so I could vent it out. And I had a Patagonia down jacket. Anything down cannot get wet because it takes a long time to dry, whereas synthetic can get wet because it'll dry faster, but it won't move through the system quite as fast. So I went with the synthetic bag, but a down jacket because I thought there was less chance of my jacket getting as wet. That was my system that I used. It worked great. I think I had to dry out my sleeping bag a couple times because as you camp for a long time, again, I was on the trail over 100 days. So that tent got its wear out of it. It started to leak towards the end, mainly through the footprint of the tent. So it did start to leak. My stuff did start to get wet. And if I wasn't choosing my camping place correctly or just thoughtfully the night before, I could end up with like a wet footprint of the tent. That was just going to happen. Whatever happens. Whatever. It happens.